So as we said, there are 3 core repository systems in NRP. We'll go over them now. You can also use any other system you would like if you come to the conclusions that none of these systems really meet your needs. But we'll be presenting these now. First off, Invenio. So Invenio is a bit of a complex ecosystem. It has a few, let's say, distributions. One is Invenio RDM. That is a pre-configured instance of Invenio with a default data model and components that are specifically useful for research data management. It also has Invenio Framework, which is more general building blocks that you can build a repository from, but it requires a lot of coding. And then you also have an integrated library system based on Invenio. That's not relevant now. And then we have CESNET Invenio, which is a fork of the Invenio RDM, which is extended with specific features relevant to the specific Czech data environment. So what are those? First, examples of Invenio. Zenodo, which you know the best. There's also an Invenio RDM sandbox that you can check and see what it looks like out of the box. Within the NRP, there are 2 instances. One is the catch-all data repository, which is still under development. It still doesn't have the data model we are planning it to have and the visual identity and stuff like that, but it is in operation. You can put your data there. Then there's MBDB, which is a pilot repository that is in production. This isn't the best example of the user interface because they created that all themselves. It's not the Invenio RDM UI. And then there's also the National Document Repository, for example. Now, what are the differences between Invenio RDM and CESNET Invenio? It already contains integration to the infra authorization and authentication interface. This is quite a lot. It might seem inconspicuous, but that is actually quite a lot of code and made quite some big changes. One of the next presentations will go into more detail explaining what this is and how it works in the back. But because of this integration, if you're building a repository on CESNET Invenio, you really don't need to care about any of that, which is great. You don't want to. And then it already has DevOps integration into the lower levels of the repository interface, such as the Kubernetes and S3. You don't need to know what that is or care about it if you're not developing tools on top of that. And then it has an extended features for workflows, which you can define with more granularity per community in each instance of the repository. There's documentation on it. We can go through it on a consultation. Then coming soon is integration of the Czech core metadata model so that you can have an instance with the core Czech core metadata model out of the box. I believe the actual model already is implemented, but not the specific UI components on top of it, at least the ones that are not reusable from RDM. We can expect that to be done maybe around spring. There are some other plans on future developing and improving Invenio RDM so that it really is competitive and even better than what you know from Zenodo, for example, such as an improved deposition form, which is a bit more user-friendly, or an improved dataset upload, which results in maybe fewer user errors. But that is not done yet. Those are just intents. CESNET is planning on providing 3 levels of support depending on how much customization of the system you are requiring. If you are happy with just the CCMM as it is, and you maybe need 1 or 2 fields with like specific domain vocabularies, and you just want more of a generic system for depositing data in your field, they'll do just about all the development for you. If you want extended CCMM with like larger extensions, then you will need to be doing some of the configuration and development on your own. We'll provide some support, but it is out of the capacity of the CESNET development team to do all of it. And if you want to develop use an entirely your own metadata model, then you'll need to do that all on your own. CESNET will not. They'll provide like some general recommendations, but you'll need to have the developers to understand the code and inject that according to the documentation. This is what metadata in Invenio, or how it is defined at the moment. And again, this is something that CESNET programmed. Default Invenio RDM does not allow you to define your own metadata model. They did it in the past. It turned out to be too much work for them to support it. So you can define the metadata model in a YAML file. This is a screenshot from GitHub about the metadata model with CCMM using Invenio RDM components. This is all publicly available. Links are in the presentation. The metadata model has a huge impact on the entire rest of the system. It determines what the filtering will look like, what the components will look like. If it's not in the metadata, like you can't really use it anywhere else, unless it's like determined by it. So this is going to be a lot of work in the beginning, but we'll help you with it. Then you'll probably need to do some metadata mappings because different systems have different models. The data site mapping is required for Invenio to work. Without that, it won't. But then you'll have specific other things you'll need. Definitely check core metadata model for the NMA. And you can define either in code or via an XSLT transformation to any other platform you need that is domain specific. There'll be an entire presentation dedicated to persistent identifiers in the afternoon. They are supported by default in Invenio. We expect DOI to be default. If you need another one, it is possible to consult us about that. The way it works by default in the system with the versioning system is that a new DOI is minted for each version of the dataset. By version, I mean the data deposited in the repository itself changes. If it's just you need to update the metadata, a new version doesn't need to be created. Those are still tracked, like we can see what changed, but that is done using revisions. Technicality, but we get a lot of questions about that. And it is possible to define a different DOI prefix per community if that was something you needed. If not, don't care about it. And sometimes you need the different, you want to join the different versions of the data set under a single persistent identifier, and this is also provided by default out of the box. It's a canonical DOI or concept DOI, parent DOI I've seen. There's support for communities and user roles. These are the default roles defined in a community. Most cases, that will be exactly what you need. If not, it's easy to define extra roles and specify what impact they should have on the what permissions that role should have, and how they come into play with the deposition workflow, for example. The workflows are defined in Python code. Here's the documentation in case the developers amongst us were interested. Now to the user interface. That is Invenio uses a hybrid model. The front end is in React, specifically semantic UI. Then there's some other frameworks on the server side. In general, please reuse as much of the UI from what CESNET provides as possible. Once more, reuse as much as possible. Like, I know maybe you have developers and you're like excited to give them work. Great. But like, as I said with operations, this can cause a lot of bugs. Along the way, you'll need to update it every single year. The more custom code you have, the more work it will be later, and you might not have the resources to do that later. So really consider, like, do I actually need it? Is it really that important? And if it is, great, go for it. But think twice. But of course, it is possible to write custom components and integrate them into the system. We can have a separate consultation with the developers to go into details on how exactly that would work. And it will be case on case based on what you need. If it's just a custom previewer, that will probably be relatively easy to embed. This is what the default Invenio RDM looks like. I just felt I had few images. Everything is possible to customize. You can change the colors, how rounded the corners are, stuff like that. Fun. What will the DevOps actually look like for CESNET Invenio? They're planning to provide a testing, staging, and production environment. This is all going to be managed by the CESNET DevOps team. For the testing environment, they are going to provide an on-click test deployment. This is in progress. Last information I had, they're finishing the last final things, and it should have been done just around now. So great. It is working now. It's just that you need to write an email to CESNET and they'll deploy it for you. So this should just be easier for your developers. And they're also going to provide error logging so that you can see the errors that it is throwing in the glitch tip environment. All of the code of all the instances of CESNET Invenio are publicly available on GitHub. It's only the more sensitive things that really interact with the CESNET environment that are private in the CESNET GitLab instance. So you can contribute code like that and integrate it relatively easily. And that is everything from me. And I'll pass the word to my colleague, Milan. And maybe questions later for everyone.
We could have a place for time for one question. Anybody? Yep, Robert.
You mentioned integrity.
Should be in the recording.
Okay, recording. You mentioned plans for integration with OpenAir Graph. Can you tell more what this is about?
Yes, so basically it's metadata mapping to the OpenAir Graph metamodel from the default CCMM. So if you are building a metadata model that is based on that, you will have that out of the box and be able to have your metadata harvested into OpenAir. If you modify the metadata model, you might need to extend it or tweak it. I'm not exactly sure what phase this is finished, but I think we have Michael here in the afternoon who will know more.
Okay, thank you very much, Illyria. One more, okay.
Hello. There will be many instances with different features implemented there. How it will be updated? It will be somehow solved by CESNET, or it is on responsible of each organization?
Yes, so it depends on which model you're using. So if you're using CESNET Invenio with minimal customizations, they will do the updating for you because it will be pretty much the same everywhere. If you're going to customize the code a lot, then you the development team of the repository will be responsible for upkeeping the custom code you write. And CESNET requires updating it once a year just to make sure security bugs and patches are all clear. So that is a long-term commitment and a reason why not to write too much code, if possible.
A very important step of the specification phase is to determine who is responsible for what. What will be the responsibility of the National Repository Platform as a infrastructure, as a platform, and what is your responsibility as the user community that wants specific features that are not sustainable to keep them in the infrastructure. So there will be clear delimitation who is responsible for what.
Yes, and if it is a feature that is like useful for a lot of repositories, we're definitely very happy to be like sharing those amongst a lot of repositories, and then it could be like contributed to CESNET Invenio, and then they would be the ones taking care of it.
Yeah, thank you. This is important. Well, once you come up with a feature that would be interesting to more repositories, they are willing to incorporate it in the main code base. So don't hesitate to come up with your ideas, but there could be times where you will be responsible for your specific code. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much, Illyria.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Milan. I'm from Charles University from Open Science Support Center, and I have came here to ask you, who of you knows DSpace? Can you please raise your hands? So, and just look around yourselves. You know, it's. Thank you very much. It's a system that's widely used. It's used mostly in Czech universities for something slightly less than research data repository, but it's generally the same thing. So I took the features from DSpace page. So it's and because this is how they introduce themselves, so maybe you can have a look on it as well. So DSpace is free open source software. It's possible to customize it. It's able to manage different types of data. It's using Apache Solr for search and of metadata and full text contents. It has some access control. It's optimized for Google Scholar indexing and in this interface in many languages. Generally, these are the main things that the developers of DSpace choose for their page to show you what DSpace is. I can deep just slightly under the water, not so deeply as Illyria did with Invenio. So I will just keep it simple that in a way that backend of DSpace and the thing that does all the tricky stuff is Java, and it's connected with outer world via some APIs. It is some database, which is in Postgres. It is some full search engine, which is Solr, which I mentioned, and the front end in newer versions of DSpace is AngularJS. DSpace metadata schema is based on Dublin core. There are some extensible fields, but it's still generally similar as it was many years ago. It didn't change very much. So it's done in a traditional way, I would say. There is also possibility of some authority control, which you can add some control vocabularies and stuff like that, but it's, again, you could do it more in a more sophisticated way, maybe, but this is how it works for many years, and it like really works. DSpace works with PIDs. It's use handle as its main PID for many years. Now DOIs are implemented, which also leads to some requirements regarding metadata, because DOI needs data-side compatible metadata schema. There was already mentioned some communities, collections. You are able to control access to these things, and you also are able to set up quite sophisticated workflows when people are inputting some new content and you need to really check what they did and return it to them to do some improvements and things like that. APIs are quite important, of course, as well, as these new modern systems are working in a way that there is this backend that's communicating with the front end really through APIs, so you can do a lot by sending the right data to the right address to the server. And also data interchange protocols are important. Basic for this is, of course, OIPMH, which is used for sending the metadata from the repository to the world generally. So data from your system can get everywhere, and your data will be, it will be possible to find them. When I'm talking about DSpace, it may be interesting to see or mention that there are different versions. As this system is quite old, the versions pre-version 7 were done differently. Version 7 was very big refactoring when they changed it to the philosophy of these APIs and front end. And now there are many versions which are still running on the old one, because what experience shows that if you do a lot of changes in your repository, you are not really able to migrate them easily to new version if these changes are too extensive. So you can still find some heavily customized DSpaces that are on older versions and are slowly getting enough courage to do the to upgrade. But you can also see there are some DSpaces on version 7+. We in Czech Republic has this very nice DSpace on Czech Digital Mathematics Library, which is on version 1.x, and it's I think from year 2008 or something like that. We've been told yesterday that it will shut down in the beginning of next year, so but it's still there, and still this DSpace works like that. We on the Charles University used DSpace pre-version 7, and they are integrated to some of our workflows as a repository for publications and for thesis. So if you would like to see a heavily customized this older version of DSpace, you can have a look on publications.suni.cz. Then there is the line, and some newer installation are using newer version of DSpace. You can have a look on repository.techlib.cz, which is institutional repository of National Library of Technology, and they have their their documents, but they are using some more modern features that were introduced in version 7. And from the newest version, I've seen this 9.x version that's on VUT in Brno. It may be slightly confusing, the versioning. They recently changed it, so they plan to create new version every year with new number. Before that, it was a bit more complicated, especially with the change to version 7. Another thing that's not very well known here is that there was a fork. I think most of you know what fork is, and I mean in the software sense, not only like the cutlery. Anyway, it was some years ago, a company that was supporting DSpace decided that they will do some more development in a different direction, so they kind of forked it elsewhere and created DSpace Chris, which is supposed to work as a current research information system. You can imagine it as something like OBD or ASEP in Czech Republic. It was actually done by Italians, and they added some interesting functionalities. For example, they are better able to work with profiles of authors or organizations and stuff like that. It was a very nice example is Technische Universität Hamburg. There are also some other examples. The thing is that it kind of changed the data model of DSpace. And as is mentioned here, there are going on discussions about future DSpace and DSpace Chris merge. So the fork will be kind of unforking itself. And again, there was a DSpace community meeting in Czech Republic yesterday in Brno, and we were informed that it was actually approved. So these two forks of two versions of DSpace will come together. So it will get new functionality which will work with new types of objects generally. So there will be a lot of development on this basic or the main branch of this software. Main branch. Well, it's an international project. It's really built on some community support. The project is led by LARASIS, which is a non-profit from USA. There are also many companies that are providing some support for it, which is important because this really creates some kind of like ecosystem, and you have people who can help you for money and provide you with some new functionality. So we have these, like the first three are traditional ones. PCG Academia from Poland is kind of aggressively trying to do a bit more and get a more share of the market. And there is also DataQuest in Slovakia, so we have even like local Czechoslovak support for DSpace. This is quite important, I think, because it means that it will be always developed somewhere, somehow. Then in NRP, it's CLARIN DSpace, which is another fork. And this fork was created for the research data, actually. It was originally for linguistics data, then they expanded a bit their scope to digital humanities, and then they expanded a bit their scope to NRP, so like everything that will be possible. You can see the source code on GitHub. This version is, it was one of the DSpaces that were heavily customized and did the leap of faith and really changed everything to version 7. So they already did this big step. They are on version 7.6 something. The other numbers aren't so important, so it's over 7. So this is a newer thing. It's still running on a Lindat MFF SUNY repository, so you can have a look and see how like the system in production looks like. I stole this schema from Pavel Straniak, and it's trying to explain what are the differences from the main DSpace. So main differences are licensing framework, because they find out that they need to work with licensing regarding research data, and especially in linguistics, in a slightly different way. So they expanded this functionality. They did some changes to user interface, because if you work with publications, it's slightly different than if you work with research data. They worked on findability. This is something that they think that's really important. It allows other services to gather metadata from the repository and put them somewhere on the internet. So you can think about it as putting it on Google, putting it on Web of Science data part and stuff like that. And then they did some other things as well. Well, did I say everything that's important? I think.
You did.
Generally. Should I go?
You can stay.
I will stand on the other side, okay, to see you better.
Thank you very much.
This is really the last slide. So there is no.
It contains minutes. We learned yesterday, last slide. So you've got like 20 seconds, Milan. One.
No, I've frozen. What did you do? So there is no CLARIN DSpace pilot repository in NRP. Yeah, you can just read the slide. Ask Daniel later. But there are other instances in production, so you actually can have quite a good idea what it looks like. Like UFAL is operating this research data repository for many years, so they have really the experience from the field. The other thing is that DSpace is being developed by the active international community, which I already mentioned, and the NRP specific functionalities will be mostly added on the top of the original code, so it would like blend together in a proper way. So like upgrade will still work. So it's not really revolution for DSpace, but rather evolution, I would say. And that's it.
Okay, thank
Are
you
you
very
happy?
much, Milan. To a large part, mainly for the administrators and data curators, you should not worry about the specifics of the individual repository systems. But for you IT people, this could be, revealing about the back, about the ground that we are building on. So we'll continue with Eliška, with ASEP Adela, and if you've got any specific questions regarding any of the repositories, you can ask Milan or Illyria later during the breaks. So it's yours, Eliška.
Okay. So, hello. My name is Eliška Blažková. I am from the library of the Czech Academy of Sciences. And in the next few slides, I would just briefly like to tell you a few words about ASEP. So, what is ASEP Data Repository Platform? It's one of the 3 core repository platforms in NRP. It's developed by the Library of the Czech Academy of Sciences. And I think we need to just briefly jump into history of ASEP because it's complicated how we got here. So, ASEP itself is very ancient. It's from like early 90s. It was first created for Czech Academy of Sciences as a CRIS system. Then later on a bibliographic database for full text was added. And lastly, in 2018, the data repository works on the data repository started in its most crude form. This was built completely in-house as a closed source thing, but now ASEP joined NRP in 2024, and currently we are in the works of improving the repository, open sourcing it. Some parts of the code are already on GitHub, and yeah, so let's look at some basic features of ASEP as we currently have them. So ASEP out of the box supports handle and DOI for its persistent identifiers for data. We have support for dataset versioning. As was mentioned before, we have a database of full texts as well as data. So ASEP supports ability to link the dataset to its paper. Natively, ASEP stores data in datasat compatible, slightly customized Unimark, because as you may know, Unimark does not really play well with data, so we added some of our fields. But if you need modern formats, we support exports to different JSON, XML, and CSV schemes. We also support rich metadata with schema.org, which is useful for integration with Google services like Google Scholar or Google Dataset Search. And we support both Z3950, which is really ancient, and OAI PMH library protocols. And lastly, I would like to mention a few things that we are hoping to add into ASEP data repository in the next year during 2026. So, as requested by our community, by data stewards of the Czech Academy of Sciences, we are adding the ability to archive DMPs, to get handle for those DMPs, so they can reliably link it to providers and to link these DMPs with their source data. Then we would like to build upon that to be able to do that directly from a DSW data stewardship wizard or fair wizard instance. Then we are working on new and improved workflow for publishing scientific data. We are integrating the work of data curators into the mix so that you have the ability to look at the data, return it before publishing. And then we hope to add new controlled vocabularies, ROR for organization, ORCID for authors, and SPDX licenses for licenses. That would be all from me. I thank you for your attention, and if you have any question, please ask.
Thank you, Eliška. Before we move on to the next topic, is there any question regarding the repository systems? Yep, Robert.
So thank you. You mentioned that part of the code is open source, part is closed source, meaning like the Academy of Sciences manages that. What are your plans with providing this repository technology into the broader community? Do you plan some hope for some bigger adoption, and how will you manage this? Because, for example, if it's some proprietary code, you will need to develop it yourself for the community, or you will make licenses somehow to the user. So what are the plans regarding this? Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the question. The main complication with the partly proprietary code is that ASEP currently uses a proprietary database as a database and caching layer. So instead of something like, I don't know, Redis and Postgres, we use something called IrisDB, which is very fast, but yeah, unfortunately you need a license. So for the adoption, if a repository in NRP decided to build on ASEP, we as the library of the Czech Academy of Sciences, we would help them use our license, use our DB to have their separate stack. It's similar to how you, for example, host multiple sites on WordPress using one database. I hope I answered your question reasonably. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for cherry picking all the time, but you mentioned the controlled vocabulary for the ROR, for the ORCID and others. And I think that would be useful for the other platforms as well. And we would need it right away because we have done actually the resolver for the ROR for our student database. So if we could rely on you, it would be wonderful. How can we coordinate that effort?
I would say that all the repositories plan to adopt ROR in some way, but currently there is a thing that we are trying to solve. For example, for the Czech Academy of Sciences, there is no problem with the granularity because each institute of the academy is its own separate thing. But for example, as you mentioned with the student works, for example, Charles University doesn't have its respective faculties as part of ROR. So you can only link whole Charles University. So that is something we are trying to figure out in NRP. There are action groups working on this. So we will see what we come up with.
Okay, one more, Georgia. Thank
I will be very fast. I just was curious because you mentioned you have some integrations with DSW and FairWizard. Is this DSW the NRP one?
No, currently we are trying to build it for the for Czech Academy of Sciences instance of FairWizard, but hopefully if we build it, the code should be universal between ASEP and any instance. DSW has its own like API where you can like add buttons and it will send requests. So we hope to integrate it that way.